Hello and welcome to Dining with Death, True Crime Tuesday. Today we are discussing an infamous case, partly because of the brutality and partly because it involves actor Ashton Kutcher. This is the case of the Hollywood Ripper. Let's get into it. On Friday, July 16th, 2021, just a few weeks ago, a notorious serial killer, a man who terrorized Southern California for years, was sentenced to death. Let's go back in time so we can understand what happened. February of 2001. Actor Ashton Kutcher, who was currently starring in the hit TV show That 70s Show, walked up the drive at this Hollywood home and knocked on this door to pick up his date for the evening. He had plans to take 21-year-old Ashley Ellerin to a post-Grammys party. They texted at 8:24 confirming their plans. At around 10:45, Kutcher knocked and knocked, but Ashley never came to the door. He peeked in the window and saw something he believed to be red wine spilled on the carpet. Ashton figured Ashley must be angry that he was so late picking her up, and that's why she wasn't answering the door, and he left. There was no way for him to know that his date was dead inside the home, laying on the other side of the door. She had been stabbed 47 times in a gruesome fight for her life, a fight that sadly she did not win. 4 young women that we know of are tied to this case. 3 of them were murdered. 1 was left to tell the tale. In 1993, this woman, Trisha Picacho, aged 18, was murdered. Again, in 2001, Ashley Ellerin, aged 22, was murdered. In 2005, Maria Bruno, aged 32, was murdered. In 2006, Michelle Murphy, aged 26, was attacked but survived that attack. Now we're going to go back even further in time. August 14th, 1993, in Chicago, Rick Picacho went outside to get in his van. He saw something strange on the landing of the steps to the home and to his horror realized it was his daughter, Trisha. He ran to her, but there was nothing he could do. She was covered in blood and stab wounds, and she was dead. His son, Doug, recalls hearing his father screaming and yelling, "Call 911." Doug says that what he saw is something he cannot talk about and that he still has nightmares about it to this day. Police arrived and Rick had to make the hardest phone call there is to his wife, Diane. She came racing home from work and had to be tackled by police to stop her from getting to her daughter's body. The police did not want her to see what they had seen. Trisha, who was known as a smart and happy girl liked by everyone, had been out with her friends for one last summer hurrah before they all went off to college. As she stood on her landing around 1 a.m. with her keys in her hand, she was grabbed by a killer. He ripped her arm towards her so hard that he broke it, and then he stabbed her 12 times. Police investigated. They talked to everyone they could think of. There were no leads, no suspects, and soon the case was stone cold. The family could barely stand the pain. They moved out. They couldn't be in that house for a while. But after 4 years, they decided to go back home. Shortly after they moved back in, they got a visitor. It was Michael Gargiulo, a childhood friend of their son Doug's. Diane recalls Michael stammered as he spoke, and he said, I need to talk to Rick. Diane said, well, he's at work. And Michael said, can I wait? And she said, yes. So Michael waited for over an hour. Rick came home and he saw Michael, and he did not like the look he saw on his face. Before Michael could say anything, Michael's father and one of his sisters opened the garage door and took Michael by the arm, saying, we have to leave, let's go. Rick Picacho knew then. Michael Gargiulo knew something about Trisha's murder. The Picachos then went to the authorities with this story, and police went straight to interview Michael Gargiulo, but he was nowhere to be found. Michael Gargiulo had vanished. February 21st, 2001 brings us to the date that I've previously mentioned. Ashley Ellerin was just stepping out of the shower, getting ready for her date with Ashton Kutcher, when she was violently attacked. The killer attacked with such ferocity that she was left with 47 stab wounds, 12 of which would have been fatal on their own. This poor girl did not have a chance. Her throat was slashed so severely that her head was nearly severed. She had been stabbed in the skull, and when the knife was pulled out, it took a piece of her skull with it, quote, almost like a puzzle piece, as an attending officer remembers. She died just outside her bathroom door, and her date, Kutcher, would peek in and see blood, thinking it was red wine, shortly after her murder. December 1st, 2005, Maria Bruno was attacked in her home in El Monte, California. She too was viciously attacked, being stabbed to death, dying with 17 stab wounds. Maria was the mother of young children who had escaped an abusive husband and rented an apartment in a gated building so she and her family would feel safe. The security measures failed miserably. The killer entered her kitchen, grabbed a knife, and went into her bedroom, where he killed her where she slept and mutilated her body horribly, according to one of the detectives, in the ways you see in the movies but happens rarely in real life. And I won't go into any more details than that. Police looked into Maria's husband, who they cleared as a suspect, and then the case went cold. April 27, 2008. Michelle Murphy is at her home in Santa Monica, California. She is asleep in bed. A killer slips in through her window into her bedroom, and she wakes up as she is being stabbed. She is stabbed in the chest several times, but is able to get her feet up under the killer and with her legs throws him off of her and across the room. He runs, and bleeding, she pursues him. He turns and says, "I'm sorry," as he runs from her. The man has left more evidence than he knows behind, a trail of his own blood in the alley, and has also left a victim who survives. Police are still investigating these cases. They hadn't released this information at the time, but they had mailed DNA from underneath the fingernails of Trisha Picacho back in Chicago. And remember, they had that story about Doug's childhood friend, Michael Gargiulo, and that strange visit he made to the Picacho home back when they moved back into the home. Over the decade and a half, from the first murder in 1993 to the last in 2008, computer science progressed rapidly, and the method police agencies used to share information improved by leaps and bounds. Detective Tom Small in California had always been haunted by the fact that he hadn't been able to solve Ashley's murder. But his list of suspects was very long. Ashley was really popular. She had a large group of friends. She had been having a secret relationship with her landlord, and she also had several boyfriends. There was also this other guy. This guy really creeped out Ashley and her friends. He was the heating and AC guy that Ashley's landlord used for repairs. He was some wannabe actor who said he was a boxer and just made everyone feel really uneasy. And his name was Michael. They didn't have enough evidence to really hone in on anyone, and Detective Small just couldn't seem to make any headway on Ashley's murder. One day, Detective Small got a call from a Chicago detective who had heard about Ashley's murder. Rumors of Michael Gargiulo turning up in LA had made their way back to Chicago. The two cops met, and Small was shown a photo of the childhood friend in Chicago, the one who had showed up that day at the Picacho house and had acted so strangely. The Chicago detective asked Detective Small, "Is this guy on your list?" And Small said, "Yes, he is." Police then set their sights on finding Michael Gargiulo. 2002, Michael Gargiulo is located. He was asked to give a DNA sample. He didn't cooperate, but Detective Small said, "It got done," whatever that means. The sample was sent to Chicago, and it was a perfect match to the DNA found under Trisha Picacho's fingernails. Now, this wasn't enough for the DA, who said that because Michael was a friend of the family, there could be other reasons for DNA being there. This is baffling to me. Really, really surprising. Without the DA's support and enough for an indictment, Michael Gargiulo slipped away. He moved around quite a bit, and in 2005, he ends up in El Monte, California. At the time, he had been through several girlfriends and had even fathered a child. Then the murder of Maria Bruno takes place. Gargiulo then breaks up with his girlfriend and leaves her and their child and moves back to Santa Monica. There, he attacks Michelle Murphy. She fights for her life. She gets away, and this attack changes everything. Remember that trail of blood leading away from the Murphy crime scene? Police send that blood to be tested. A month passes, and then the results come back. There is a match to the sample in the system that was taken from Michael Gargiulo back in 2002, when the Chicago DA had said it's not enough evidence. The blood in the alley belonged to Michael Gargiulo. He had been living just across the alley in one building down from Michelle, and whenever she had her blinds open, he would be able to see right into her bedroom. That gives me the chills. June 6th, 2008. Within 24 hours of the results of the DNA match, Michael Gargiulo is arrested. But when he's arrested, he asks a very strange question. He asks one of the police officers, "Which agency is arresting me?" Now, this told the detectives there's more out there. He doesn't know which crime he's being arrested for. So Sergeant Richard Lewis thinks about this, and he remembers a case 3 years earlier in El Monte with very similar circumstances. He calls the detective on the case and finds out that Michael Gargiulo had also been Maria Bruno's neighbor. In both attacks in 2005 and 2008, a blue cotton over-the-shoe bootie had been found. That was the only clue. Gargiulo had worn them to both of the crime scenes. As the pieces begin to fall into place, investigators learned that Michael Gargiulo had systematically stalked these women. He watched them. He planned these attacks. He enjoyed it. But they had him now. Gargiulo then sat in jail for 11 years before trial. That is the longest time in LA County history for any inmate between arrest and trial. There have been almost 100 hearings. Gargiulo constantly fires his attorneys and then tries to act as his own attorney, just the usual kind of moronic and ridiculous things that you see these narcissistic types do. May 2nd, 2019. The trial finally begins. Prosecutor Dan Ackman said, "The methodical and systematic slaughter of women, that's what this case is about." Mike was a strange guy, says Mirko Hoffman, a man who now describes himself as Gargiulo's former best friend. Hoffman said he would learn from people's mistakes, other criminals' mistakes, how to get away with a crime. And he told me if he ever got caught committing any crime, he would just lie until he dies. Lie until you die. That's what he would say. August 12th, 2019. After a 3-month trial, the jury took the case into deliberation. After 3.5 days of deliberating, they reached a verdict. Guilty for attacking Michelle Murphy, guilty of murdering Maria Bruno, guilty of murdering Ashley Ellerin. Trisha's case was not tried with the other 3 as it took place in Cook County, Illinois. The tragic part about this is that Illinois prosecutors now admit it was a mistake not to arrest Gargiulo a decade ago. You think? They now feel there was, in fact, enough evidence, and that is really frustrating. Some people could have been saved. After the 2019 conviction, there were some procedural delays, and then, of course, the pandemic hit. This delayed Gargiulo's sentencing for over a year. But on Friday, July 16th, 2021, Michael Gargiulo was sentenced to die for his crimes. He will now be extradited to Illinois to finally stand trial for the 1993 murder of Trisha Picacho. Finally, years after they had him. I root for law enforcement. I think most of them are good guys. Of course, they have their bad guys and their issues. We cannot deny that. But I do believe that most of them want to do good. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. But hopefully every time something awful like this occurs, they learn from it and they do better. I think that's the best we can hope for in any situation. My heart goes out to the family members. I hope this conviction and upcoming trial for Trisha's murder brings them some long-deserved comfort. Michael Gargiulo is a monster. He's a coward, and he is finally getting what he deserves. Thank you for joining me today on Dining with Death, True Crime Tuesday. We sure appreciate you guys. Like and subscribe if you would like to see more. Stay safe and be kind to each other. And I'll see you next time on Dining with Death. Bye.